Okay, so yes, the lights are bright. So Matt, let's talk a little bit about the DailyMail.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's UK based, but you guys are growing quite big globally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are you guys organized for programmatic?
So for programmatic, we've got dedicated teams in the UK and the US. The US team is slowly but surely growing more and more, and a lot of the requirements. We still rely a little bit on the UK. So that is, the UK and London is DailyMail's hub, and we've got all of our dev team there, all of our technical resources. But slowly but surely, we're really beginning to build out the US offering. We still lean on the UK a little bit, but right now we've got dedicated analysts for the US. We've got dedicated programmatic sales resources for the US. So slowly but surely, it's really building out.
Now, is the ideal to move to a point where it's just one sales team and you don't need to have programmatic specialists?
Yeah, I think that's. I think there'll always be the need for programmatic specialists. In terms of
as a programmatic specialist.
As a programmatic specialist, I want to keep a job. But I think the sales team is critical, and I think it's just going to be. It's no different to how mobile was a few years ago. Now everyone sells mobile. Everyone will sell programmatic, and we're actively sort of onboarding programmatic knowledge within our sales team, and they're actively pitching that in market where it makes sense as well. So the idea is to have the sales team that can do both programmatic and direct seamlessly.
But that's the ideal. So what's the biggest challenge that you end up facing?
The biggest challenge, I guess from a programmatic standpoint, it's probably the fragmentation of technology, I think is a challenge. And right now we've moved, I guess over the last 12 months, we've sort of moved away from the traditional waterfall formation where you're passing from one server to another to header bidding, where everything's horizontal, everything's competing on price. And off the back of that, we've had good revenue gains, and there's the obvious advantages that come along with that. But I think how we're managing all of those header bidding partners and the increased number of platforms that we're working with, and getting the data out of the platforms and consolidating that into one place so we've got clean, actionable data. I think that's probably our biggest challenge right now.
So what specifically, let's talk about the challenge of header bidding before we get into collectives.
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge for DailyMail when it comes to header bidding?
I guess a lot of it is down to insights. We don't feel latency is too much of an issue. So we're set up completely asynchronously, so none of our header bidding partners will hold up us calling our ad server. So we'll call our ad server at the same time, regardless of whether or not the header bidding partners have returned. But I think getting the insight on why they're not returning, who's causing discrepancies, who's got, who returns the quickest. And we're looking into a number of different technologies at the moment in market, and there seems to be a lot of these popping up at the moment, sort of the programmatic tag management solutions. So we're looking into those to hopefully try and streamline that process for us.
Okay, but it's manageable, the latency.
It's manageable. I think it's manageable.
Okay, so let's talk about the collectives. So we just, it was last week, we were in Rome, and it seems like in Europe there's a big movement towards this publisher collective. What is going on with the publisher collective? What's the promise?
The promise?
And then we'll get into the reality.
Okay, I think publisher collectives have been led mainly by Europe, more so than the US. And the adoption in Europe is becoming fairly widespread now. So we've got the likes of Laplace Media, we've got Czech Publisher Exchange, I think we've got collectives popping up in Greece and Italy as well. And there's probably in Europe.
Why is that?
I think it's probably two reasons. First is the obvious threat from the big digital giants, so Facebook and Google. And coming together in market allows you to combat that maybe more successfully. And then the second is probably due to the market fragmentation in Europe. So if you think on a salesperson by salesperson basis with Europe versus the US, a salesperson in the US could sell a campaign that can reach across all of the US. So you've got 300 million people. Then in Europe, for the same sort of publisher overheads, the same publisher resource, that salesperson will sell a campaign that will reach maybe 10, 20, 30 million. So the overall volumes of buy. So in Europe, there's more to be gained from the efficiency play of the collective.
Okay, so what is the promise then for the U.S. market? Is there going to be a move towards this?
I think there will be. I think Pangaea is quite an interesting example.
Can you explain a little bit for those who aren't familiar with?
Yes. So Pangaea is sort of an alliance or a collective of I think it's Guardian. You've got Financial Times, Economist, CNN International. I may have missed one, but they're sort of all global brands, and that's I think the main differentiator with Pangaea versus a lot of the European collectives that we've seen pop up in recent years, in the fact that they're all global publishers, and they're also coming together in markets where there is already massive scale, and those publishers themselves have massive scale in those markets. So it might not be necessarily an efficiency play that they're going for.
So what's the goal here? What will within Pangaea? What will it enable the members to do that they can't do on their own?
So I think that it comes back to combating sort of Facebook and Google, and I think that in the coming months and years, those digital giants are only going to claw more and more of the total digital advertising budgets. I was reading that it could be anything up to 2/3 within sort of 2 years. And then you've got the other platforms, so you've got the AOLs, the Twitters, the LinkedIn of the world, which are taking a big chunk. So those premium publishers that want to be able to reach up and get those budgets need to come together to have a more scaled offering for the
It's
for the
about
advertiser.
data at the end
I
of
think
the
it's
day.
about data more than anything. I think those guys, I think just pooling your inventory together is not enough. I think the scale's great, but it's how you can activate on that scale and sort of leverage all of the unique selling points, all of the first-party data from all of the publishers, pull that together so you've got a more consolidated offering and a better offering than you'd have individually for advertisers.
And so DailyMail's not part of this.
DailyMail's not part of it.
Right.
We're not part of it. I think a lot of publishers are keeping a close eye on it to see how it sort of plays out.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where they announced it, and there was a lot, but it hasn't really been seen.
It hasn't really been seen, no.
So, and that's the sort of the part that I
yeah.
wonder is like sort of, I think last week in Rome, one of our speakers compared it to sort of communism, good on paper, but not really good in execution.
Yeah.
It seems like publishers getting together to cooperate is sort of like just putting a bunch of cats in a bag. Like, is that what is the big challenge when it comes to making these things work?
I think it probably is. I think co-ops in general, especially when it's you're not necessarily doing it for the efficiency play, but you're doing it for other reasons, as you mentioned, pulling all that data together and having a much more scaled approach. I think that is, you run into the same difficulties that any sort of collective will run into. So, each of those publishers will no doubt have their own individual programmatic strategies as well, and they'll be thinking maybe further down the line, is there an opportunity cost to them of being in that collective? And as well, there's some of the makeups of the publishers within alliances that pop up can be very, very different. So I think naturally you're going to have maybe sort of pricing strategy difficulties down the line when the publishers are so different. But if they can overcome that and you can pull your data together and have a more consolidated approach, I think it's good.
So what is the difference between, or is there one, between a collective and a co-op?
I don't have a specific definition as the difference. I think co-op is probably more of a centralized unit that will operate on behalf of publishers. So much like the PLAS, which is centralized, and then you've got collectives, which are sort of more of everyone pooling their resources together for the common good.
And a lot of this seems defensive, right? Because I mean, Facebook and Google are so powerful that I think publishers a lot of times sort of feel like it's like it's like Game of Thrones. You've got these giant houses that are fighting these battles, and then the villagers just kind of get caught in between the battles, and that's kind of, it seems like that's how publishers sort of feel sometimes. I mean, is it what can publishers do to compete with these gigantic behemoths?
I mean, I think it's difficult. I think Google and Facebook are obviously very uniquely positioned, but I think publishers as well have things that those guys don't have. So we're producing high quality editorial content. We've got those great environments, which I think brands appreciate. And I think as well, publishers, especially if they do come together and they can offer back that sort of real trusted partnership with brands and feedback information and help on a closer level than maybe Google and Facebook would. And we know that Google and Facebook are fairly closed, I guess almost black box solutions. And I think if publishers can come together and be more open and more transparent and feedback to advertisers and let them know that you want this user, but we've got 3 more which are really, really similar.
Yeah.
So I think it's the transparency and the feedback back to brands that will really help premium publishers.
Yeah. So, I mean, with 2016 around the corner, what are like 2 or 3 things that DailyMail is focused on when it comes to programmatic in the new year?
I think programmatic guaranteed is got to be it's going to be a focus for everyone. I think
You have a PMP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we obviously operate in the open marketplace. We operate private auctions, preferred deals, and programmatic guaranteed. And I think that sort of as the traditional trading desk maybe becomes slightly decentralized and move back to the agency, so the knowledge of automation is sat around the planning table at that point. I think automating direct buys will be the next big push, hopefully, for DailyMail and the market in general.
Okay. I want to open up to questions. Anyone? I can't really see. Anyone? Okay, cool.
Cool.
Matt, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.